which is there is a lot of really interesting, exciting stuff going on in the world around blockchain, but my job is to figure out how that applies to federal government. So I've been in the public sector for 25 years. It's my 20th year with IBM, just celebrating my anniversary year. And I am trying to figure out now, taking away the hype, why is this really applicable? So hopefully in the next 29 minutes, we will get some real view of why this is applicable for government. Okay? So the first question is, why do you care? Okay, and that's a really important question around blockchain. The general mentioned earlier today, technology is not for technology's sake. There has to be a challenge. And so when we're talking about blockchain, we need to talk about the challenge in a business network. Okay? So a business network, my favorite example is, the FAFSA for getting your kid through financial aid in college, right? All of us are shaking our heads, we've been through that process. It involves a lot of different organizations working together for the same goal. But today, there's trust, transparency, accountability, and visibility issues in that network. Okay? And at the end of the day, what blockchain is going to help us to do is bring that network together to do something it couldn't do before. Okay? So think about the business networks that you're involved in for the rest of the session today. That's what we're going to start with blockchain. Now, I'm not going to do blockchain 101, and those of you who've been in here who've had me do it are like, thank goodness he's not doing blockchain 101. But what I am going to do is tell you, of all the conversations I've had with government, there's a couple of themes that come out as to why blockchain applies. The first is open government and selective data sharing, not just of the data, but around the rules of the data. So the only blockchain 101 I'll give you, right, is that you have a block. You're updating a local transaction database of that block. It's then going to be available to others in the business network. And I know that block is protected. I know that block has a hash of the previous block. It allows me to know that it hasn't been tampered with. It's immutable, right? And so that second point around cybersecurity and privacy, that's the other reason why folks are getting excited. Is not only does it provide that data sharing, but it protects from the outside, and it provides the ability to have privacy from the inside. Selective data sharing, right, in that network. Not everybody can see everything all the time. The last piece is that government is very interested in blockchains a lot of times because they have a regulatory compliance role. In a lot of cases, they actually sponsor this business network and what's going on. And we'll hear some of those examples today. So at the end of the day, I really like this picture. The picture on the left shows you kind of the existing system of today. Multiple members of the business network, all with their own view of what is the truth in a legacy system, all having to have point-to-point connections to connect back to anybody else in the network, right? Often through a middleman. What blockchain is going to enable is, I call it, it's going to give you Kevin Bacon 1 degree of separation, right? You're going to be able to connect in and talk to and share data with any member of the business network, right? You're going to be able to do that in a way where there is a shared view of the truth in that business network, and yet you're going to be able to still do whatever it is you do, including accessing your legacy systems. So think of it as kind of something on top of what you might have today. And then there's a couple of really exciting things that blockchain brings to the table, including things like permissioning, increased trust in the network. If I get rid of one of those members of the business network, like that bank goes away, I can replace it with another bank and have them have access to all the previous transactions. So there's a lot of really intrinsic value there. So when I came up and did this session, I was excited about the panel that I was able to bring to the table here, but I wanted to be able to give you a little bit more about what blockchain is. So deviously, we have 4 demos waiting for you in the auditorium after this session. We have one with the CDC around better data sharing around population health information. We have one around our work with Maersk in supply chain and visibility and paperless supply chain. We have another one around our work with Walmart, which is basically how you take food safety and turn an investigation of 6+ days into what, piece of lettuce was infected with E. coli to less than 10 seconds in a blockchain. And we also have one around data usage agreements. The whole concept of how you create and the life cycle support of a data usage agreement is supported by the blockchain. Okay? So I wanted to make sure that you guys go back and see those demos sometimes later today. But with that, I want to get our panel up on the stage here. So I'm going to do quick introductions while they come up, and then I'll give you the real reason I wanted them to be up here with me today. So let's start with Justin Herman. Justin leads the Emerging Citizen Technology Program Office for GSA's Technology Transformation Services. And that includes AI, citizen services, blockchain, virtual augmented reality, and social tech. And then Mr. David Vargas. And Dave is a meritorious executive and a career member of the SES at OPM. He currently serves as director of our human resources line of business. Okay, so I'm surrounded.
I think I'm a little far away there.
Yeah, we like you close, Justin. That's good. Okay, so here's the reason why I wanted these guys. I have had the chance to work very closely with both of them over the last year. And they are doing real stuff with blockchain in government. But they are also incredible examples of, I think, the two biggest challenges or impediments to how we move forward with blockchain, right? One is business value, right? And Mr. Vargas is going to epitomize why we drive business value. That's why we're implementing blockchain projects, not just to implement them, right? You have to have sufficient business value for the entire business network. And then the other thing is basically, you're implementing, you're going to solve this problem with Bitcoin, right? I mean, there is education, there is the ability to say, look, I understand what this capability can do. How does it fit in with other emerging technology capabilities? And so Justin does the best job I've seen of being able to help overall government learn and understand what blockchain can do.
That doesn't sound like a compliment. That sounds like a problem of government.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Okay. So we got some time. We'll hopefully take a few questions from the audience even maybe, but we want to just go through a couple of these points. So David, I want to start with you. Can you talk about the characteristics of blockchain that most interested you as far as driving that value to the business network?
Certainly. So I started with OPM about 5 years ago, and I am a big proponent of use of data to make decisions, policy decisions, improvements in business processes, etc. And one of the things that I saw is in the federal government to do human capital, we have, I think it's in excess of 800 different types of applications throughout the federal government. Any guess, and this is a trick question, any guess in the audience how many forms we have in the federal government to do human capital? Any guesses?
3,000.
3,000. Anybody else? 3,000.
600.
600. 15,000. Okay, so we're not as bad. There's approximately 762 that we counted so far, and we know we have a few missing. As we've done our data standards at OPM, we're looking at about, I'm guessing about 1,900 to 2,000 separate data standards for human capital. So I'm an accountant, so I do the math. That's about 3 data elements per form. So as you can imagine, we have this huge duplication of components that come in. Not just that, but the data that we get, at best, to do employee transfer, for example, it takes about 60 days to get your leave transfer when you go from one agency to another. When you try to do retirement, to get the data to do your retirement processing, it's, I think it takes about 2 months right now to do retirement determination. So the timeliness of that data is so critical. So one of the things that I'm looking for as a government executive is looking for ways where I can have access, almost immediate or near immediate access to the data. I like the immutability, and you're going to hear that word over and over and over again. What that means is there's auditability of the data, so it doesn't disappear. Now, people make mistakes, we fat finger things, but if you have the ability to maintain that record there, and then the only way to change it is to have a new record that overrides it, there is that traceability of that particular transaction. And my favorite component is if I can actually figure out a way, and we will, to get data as transactions are approved in transactional systems. And I don't care what transactional systems we have. If that data gets immediately updated into what we are calling an employee digital record that follows you through your federal career, follows you in and out of government, okay, and allows us for the ability to process transactions very quickly. We actually have a prototype. Can I talk about this? Right. So we have a prototype. We've actually prototyped a blockchain for an employee transfer. And we can actually do this. My goal was 30 minutes. We can actually do this in minutes, like a couple minutes, to do that transfer between two agencies. Imagine the power of that just in terms of the amount of effort that it takes. All the forms, there are 28 different forms to do an onboarding transaction in the federal government. When you transfer from one agency to another, you basically are terminating one and onboarded on the other. Imagine the business value that it brings to government if we are able to figure this out. Right? And it all starts with data standards.
So that's the kind of conversation you have to start with in blockchain.
Yeah.
Business value for the network, for specific challenges and current processes that are on David's desk every day, right? That is where you start the conversation. So then, Justin, the next part of the conversation is, okay, what is this blockchain, right? What what is the, process for education, adoption? Is it okay to use blockchain in government? And I think that's where your organization comes in.
Yeah, quick question. How many people had heard of these great use cases before and the work that's going on that he was just talking about so passionate? Well, you, sir, but there's a lot of people who are not raising their hands. Something to lay down a baseline, and it's not just for this panel. You're going to see it for RPA, you're going to see it for AI, and everything else in this. Is there certain indicators that agencies, that companies, businesses, policymakers always use to see where the government is in the space? It's usually things you can find on websites, maybe things you can find on RFPs, and policy that is written about this to govern it. What happens right now is that people don't know how much the federal government and agencies have been looking at and working in the blockchain space, because they're like, well, we don't read about this on a website. Our agency doesn't even have a policy on it, so surely they can't be taking this seriously. It is exactly the opposite that is true. We understand that a lot of times agencies can't even update their websites fast enough to sometimes keep up with the advances in these pilot programs. And a tech policy could take a year to draft and make public. So what we say, what people talk about is, well, we don't want to be onerous and we don't want to create burdens and put structure around innovation because it's too early. So what happens is these signals that people look for don't come out, and they're like, well, blockchain and government, there must just be a couple of things going on. Are people really interested in it? About a year and a half ago, when we started GSA's government-wide blockchain program, it is now, for our office in emerging tech, and we work with over 320 federal, state, and local agencies, advise Congress, other organizations, work with our international partners. Blockchain is our most requested resource right now. People, and we have almost 1,000 people participating in our GSA government-wide blockchain programs, both from the private sector, from government, and then one of the challenges is you'll go into an agency, and like talking to you, except to say a larger, a different agency, and they'll be like, we'll be working on this, we have the proof of concept, we're looking to take this to the next level, we've been testing and evaluating, but then you go one department over a few doors down, and they're like, well, this isn't actually a real thing. And so it's just to lay down a baseline, and this is for everybody in the room, when it comes to all these emerging technologies that you're going to be hearing about today, this is not 3 to 5 years in the future. People would not be here talking about it if this was just something that probably isn't going to work out, but we read an article on it, therefore we think it's cool. Agencies have been looking at this, investing in this, testing it, demoing it, building proof of concept for years. And it is now mainstreaming, and it's coming out of R&D, and it's coming into the hands of program managers. As Shakespeare said, and you alluded to then, what's that next step? Because we have hundreds of use cases for blockchain that have been submitted by agencies. 90% of them will not work. That is not a bad thing. That is a great thing. Because normally when an agency comes to the table and says, well, we've got this, we've heard about blockchain, we've been looking at it, then they're like, they go through a process and they're like, well, maybe it's not ready for us or we're not ready for it. Well, we learned how to reconfigure our systems in ways we didn't think about, and our program and our problems were solved. That's a great thing for government, no matter what individual tech you're talking about. But in the cases where it is working, and it is working, as we have seen and we have heard, these are going to fundamentally transform in ways that are exciting and interesting. So don't get all worked up about the hype and dismiss for anything. This is real, this is now, this is working for agencies whether you read about it or not, and if you're not reading about it, challenge the people around you to ask the real good questions on it to find out how you can be part of this. Because those decisions are being made now, and they need you at the table.
Thanks, Gustin. So, by the way, I contributed use case 52 and 67 to the Atlas. I don't know if those are the ones that have been thrown out. That's the 90% not working yet. But it was a great process to go through and brainstorm those on a Friday afternoon, right? With some of the greatest minds in government thinking about what might work, right? And that's where we have to do the experimentation.
Well, it's a funny thing, an anecdote about it is, so we have this thing, the Emerging Tech Atlas, emerging.digital.gov you can go to. We put up placeholder content because we knew by working with agencies across government, as GSA does, where all these things were, but you won't read about it online. So we thought, let's create a repository. All we did was put up sample content of a fraction of what we know and what we already work with at GSA, and we got bombarded by requests. It's still the placeholder content. And people are like, we didn't know this much was going on. It's like, my friend, it's a doorway to what's really going on here. And again, so the opportunity is here and everything is real.
All right, so one of the other things I wanted to get your guys' perspective on is, as an honest broker here, there's some things that are really good to use for blockchain, and there's some things that blockchain doesn't apply for so well. So I'll let you be the positive guy.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you've seen that blockchain really works well for?
So before doing time at OPM, 5 years, I did time at HUD for about 22 years. And we have a very similar concept over there. It's tenant files. So just like we have an employee digital record, we have 5 million low-income housing families that receive assisted housing. And it's kind of the same thing, except it's 4,100 agencies nationwide that have all of this information, name, address, social security number, family composition, things of that nature, that reside within a housing agency's databases and then get uploaded into HUD on a periodic basis. And it is, let me just put it, it's a challenging process. Let me put it, that's the best way to put it. So if we can do this at OPM with employee digital record, there's absolutely no reason why we can't leverage that capability to other agencies. Criminal files. We started kind of brainstorming on this, and it's just the possibilities are just endless in government. Anytime you have an issue with data transfer, you need that data right away, not 3 months, not 6 months, not a year from today, where you have to make absolutely certain that data is accurate. Right? So if you're paying subsidies or if you're cutting a check to a federal employee, that data has got to be timely and accurate. I think this is probably one of those technologies that would just advance, just kind of take us to what I call nirvana, which is the best way of doing business, at least for the time being, until somebody figures out a way to do this through osmosis or some other way.
Right, and then the other thing is, I think all those examples you mentioned had a pretty extensive business network, right? It's not like that data resides in one area, is centralized, is probably aggregated, is probably got transactional integrity issues, tech term, right? And I think that's the other place, is that, with the blockchain, those members of the business network can get value, and then get value just by interacting with each other, right, around some of those questions. You think about the city of New York around, I need a view of that housing, information because I'm working with the landlords, or that sort of thing.
American taxpayer. I was just at a data coalition. I want to give a plug to a data coalition in Hudson Hollister, who runs that, and we're looking at Data Act. So many really cool things they're doing in there. And they're now mapping actual financial data with business, government business data, and looking at things like homelessness and how much we spend in homelessness throughout the United States. Problem is, the data, and I was talking to the gentleman there that runs the project, said, how do you deal with the cadence of data when it comes in, and some of the data was from 2016, some of 2017, because, well, that's our challenge right now, right? So if we can figure out a better way, government-wide, to be able to bring that data and we can display, not just for our programs internally to government, but to the American taxpayer who's giving us the money to do all these wonderful things.
All right, so you volunteered for this.
I told him to, no holds barred with the hard or nasty questions.
So what are the places, or where have you seen where maybe blockchain is being recommended that it's not the right fit?
I don't know. So I was thinking about this ever since I volunteered for this Harvard question. And so I don't like to say like what's good or bad, because honestly, with enough pizza and Code Red Mountain Dew, coders can get a lot done. And that's why we would like to say, it's like you say about RPA and stuff, if you take one of these technologies and you have just a bad process and you think that this is going to be a magical thing that's going to help it, you're going to have a faster, more efficient, or automated, very bad and destructive process. And so in the same way that there's all sorts of different flavors and combinations in the way that blockchain can be used, some of the good things that we see immediately are supply chain management, anything that's completely bogged down in auditing processes. I know that there's obviously a lot of stuff on identity being done, but again, there's some things, because again, we hear it absolutely everything. And everyone, sometimes when you get blockchain into a conversation and you open it up to dialogue, everyone's like, well, we need a Fed coin, and we need a Fed coin. And usually the bad ideas come in when people can't differentiate Bitcoin from blockchain, and then make recommendations because they're passionate about it, they know the technology, and maybe they can see a little bit farther down the road than us. But no, overnight we're not going to have Fed coin. But if we can soberly analyze and look at our business cases and do things, these are things today that through IT modernization right now can happen. And we were discussing this earlier, so now we're partnering with the Technology Modernization Fund that recently came out, which everyone has of course heard about the Technology Modernization Fund. It's $100 million available to agencies as essentially a no-interest loan to help them kickstart their modernization processes, specifically to update legacy IT systems. This summer, we're partnering them to work with agencies and companies to help them craft their proposals in things like blockchain and robotics and AI in order to tap into that fund and again, deliver to them, like right now, on these things that we sometimes think and talk about are 3 to 5 years from now. That's an exciting thing to achieve that we can all achieve together this summertime, is to take that promise of what we think is the future and put those savings and better programs in the hands of the American people now.
Yeah. And so we were talking about this earlier, and I liked how the kind of conclusion we got to. Even if it's not a fit for blockchain, even if it's a pure identity challenge, or it's really a challenge in the current business process, or it's just, 4 members of the business network that won't agree it's sunny outside, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's those things, still as a result of that visualization, as a result of that investigation, right, there's still often conclusions that can say, oh, I can bring in robotic process automation, or I can go do a design thinking session to go, or I can build better governance into my network. So a lot of times that can take place, and then you can maybe revisit blockchain later after that core problem is addressed.
That's exactly it, and that's what happens when organizations smartly approach modernization, is just because you're not writing a check for $5 million to do it now doesn't mean literacy around the process can't help you otherwise. Now, usually my job is to help other agencies, and so for instance, on the next panel, Ed Burrows will be joining us, part of GSA's Robotic Process Automation Governance Board. I don't have to look too far outside of government to find great things, because our acquisition services within GSA and the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, PBS, they have all worked hard to get smart on this and are passionate about it. And we had a pilot for blockchain within GSA, acquisitions. It worked well. And it wasn't taking this clunky thing off a shelf. It wasn't creating GSA coin. It was using thin layers at the appropriate time of where blockchain would work, where some intelligent automation could work, and how it all fits together as part of a larger process that isn't the same process. It's a better rethinking of it. And that combination, that discrete combination, grand results that will be advancing farther on a larger scale, which they will share at other times and talk about. But again, that's just an example of even what people will tell you should be looking at in blockchain. There's all sorts of clever things today that can be done now. But if your goal is, well, I want to do blockchain, that's fantastic. Go out and check out the demos out there. But if your goal is that you want to solve your problems, there's a good chance that blockchain could play a role on it. But if not, even just understanding it is going to open you up to different things.
Yeah. And so what I always say is that the intersection is one, a really, applicable use case to the value that blockchain can bring to the business network. The second thing is that it's got to have value to all those members of the business network so that they would participate, right? And then the third thing is you need a champion. You need somebody who's going to bring together that business network into discussions. We have two right here today, right?
Don't,
To do that.
don't be afraid. So Elon Musk, SpaceX is putting people on Mars. We have 5G coming in from Verizon.
The Capitals won.
The Capitals game.
There we go.
If Tim Wilson could punch a helmet off someone's head in a game, you can sit in a meeting and learn more about this. I promise you.
All right, we have media in the room. That
Frank Conco, there's your quote, wherever you are.
Don't be afraid to experiment. There's nothing wrong with, just maybe it's not the right thing, but just take a look at it. Right?
Yeah. So, so Dave, I want to give you kind of the last word, and then I have one summary to talk about how to get started. So you've been through a POC. So, and that puts you in my mind in kind of rarefied air in government, having been through the process. So I would just like you to mention one or two things that maybe surprised you about the process, right? Good would be better, good or bad, right? But I think it would be important for folks to see, right? There is something besides, there's going to be a proof of concept. There is an after, right? And maybe you can share that.
All right. So don't be afraid. When I first heard I've never heard of blockchain before in my life when we first started this process. I'm not a technologist. I'm a CPA by training. But I had a chief technology architect over at OPM came back and said, hey, this looks really good. Let's take a look at this. And so I went to my investment review board within OPM, and I asked for the authority and the resources to just test it out. If we can do, if MIT can provide us in 15 years with unlimited energy, and they said they believe they can, we can figure out how to transfer data from point A to point B quickly and safely, right? So they gave us the funding to do this. What surprised me the most is it took us longer just to get a contract in place that will actually complete the prototype. Actually, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be surprised by that. But it took long, actually the speed to delivery using an agile process was just amazing. In less than a 2-month period, we can actually, through blockchain, demonstrate an employee transfer from one agency to another agency successfully. And it was, and not just that, but actually print, we don't need forms, but print the form because there are folks that have the forms. So be able to do that, be able to populate forms and actually use the data that was just transferred electronically. I thought it's very powerful.
Yep. And I think that part of that I'd echo on is that user experience, to be able to see the business value. If you're doing a proof of concept, don't show blocks showing up on a blockchain in the back with 40 data elements. Show the value, show the wait time that's been removed, show the delays that have been, kind of taken care of, show the notifications that can happen, right? Show the correctness that now is there, show the I don't have to fill out all these things because it's pre-populated.
Yeah.
And I think that was just a plug for your contract vehicle option, right? Working with the modernization fund.
No, and that's it's something, and actually it's an invitation to all of you. June 8th, we're going to be having a large workshop at GSA. Agencies can sponsor teams to go. Take the ideas that you've had and worked on, register for this. It'll be sent out through our channels today to sit side by side with Technology Modernization Fund program management office executives to work with you to craft the proposals to win and be able to tap into that fund. And again, this is opportunities right now to use this stuff for IT modernization this summer. And please take advantage of it and make it a great summer.
All right, 12 seconds left. This is how you get started. Get that, use case identified. Work with that sponsor. define a proof of concept, work through agile sprints. Don't go too far before you go back to your stakeholders with value. Then you want to move into a pilot, into production, so you can show that business value. Then you're going to scale.
Okay.
So I think that we're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.